Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nurdalilah Huda binti Ahmad Asri. Number matrix 1190321. So we are from group 2 are going to present about our group presentation, which is on literature review based on the two journal articles that we have chosen before. The first one is freedom of speech under pandemic, also liability of internet service provider in cyber defamations, which is an analysis on communication and Multimedia Act 1998. Next, we go through the journal article 1, which is freedom of speech and the pandemic by Mohamad. So this journal is related to chapter 3 and 4 in our course outline, which is defamation law on the internet and sedition law on the internet. So as we can see nowadays, there is a lot of fake news regarding COVID-19 and also more false rumors of vaccination information spreading on the internet that may bring harm to people. So in Malaysia, the right of free speech and expression is stated in Article 10, subsection 1 of the Federal Constitution, freedom of speech, assembly and association, which is stated that every citizen has the right to freedom of speech and expression. But even though people have given the right to freedom of speech and expression, sometimes they misconceive it without any limitation, so that this right has been distorted and deformed to suit some private agenda. To avoid this thing happens regularly, there is also a list of restrictions stated in Article 10 of the Malaysian Constitution, which limits the right of free speech on the grounds of guarding political stability and racial harmony. So this restriction is justifiable, especially in the information and technology era, to avoid the rampant issue of hate speech and defamation. In fact, no constitutional state has attempted to translate the right into an absolute right, which was also decided in the case of public prosecutor against Oi, Kisei and others in 1971. So Eric Barron's 2005 classified free speech into a few categories, which is the importance of an open discussion to the discovery of truth, free speech as an aspect of individuals' right to self-development and fulfillment to reflect what is to be human. Next, free speech as protection of all citizens to understand political issues, to participate effectively in working democracy. And the last one, to be suspicious of government based on distrust of the ability of government to make necessary distinction between speech which might appropriately be regulated and speech which in any liberal society should be tolerated.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Amirah binti Zainudin, number matric 1192619. I will continue about point of defamation. This point is related with chapter 3, defamation law on the internet. Defamation can be referred as false statement made about someone or an organization which can bring damage to their reputation. Generally, law of defamation has two types, namely libel and slander. Libel can be defined as defamation in permanent form, such as written words in articles, newspapers, or even social media such as Facebook posts and WhatsApp messages. Meanwhile, slander is defamation in temporary form, such as spoken words given by someone. In Malaysia, the Defamation Act 1957 is derived from the constitutionally permissible restriction on free speech. Thus, it is important to note that Malaysia contemplates both civil and criminal defamation. Nevertheless, civil defamation has been mentioned by Defamation Act 1957. Under this act, it is stated that defamation is established if the plaintiff is able to show the defamatory statement was done with malicious intention. Furthermore, plaintiff also need to show that the statement is not fair or justifiable. On the other hand, criminal defamation has been provided in section 499 of the Penal Code, stating that defamation is established once it is shown that the words either spoken or intended to be read or signed, or by visible representations, make or publish any imputation concerning any person intending to harm, or knowing or having reason to believe that such imputation will harm such person. Apart from that, Section 502 of the Penal Code mention matters regarding selling and offering any printed or engraved defamatory matters. Next, incitement to commit any offence. Under Article 10(2)(a) of the Federal Constitution to justify the restriction towards freedom of speech and expression to cause incitement to commit any offence. This restriction can be explained by looking at the multiracial composition of the Malaysian population. There are several types of incitement to commit any offence, and one of it regarding obscenity. In Malaysia, there are at least 3 legislations which deal with obscene material, namely the Penal Code, the Printing Presses and Publication Act 1984, and the Film Censorship Act 1952. Section 298A also mention about offences such as causing disharmony and disunity on grounds of religion to restrict freedom of speech. However, considering some issues happening nowadays, it is important to acknowledge the breadth of the penal code combat the problem. It will appear that internet website, bulletins board on e-authority as inciting others to commit any offence be prosecuted. Thus, the above provision of the penal code will appear sufficiently broad to cover attempt to create hostility and disunity, as well as transmission of obscene material over the internet or cyberspace. Third point is sensitive matters. In addition to the restriction in Article 10(2)(a), Article 10(4) of the Federal Constitution also stated that Parliament may pass laws prohibiting the questioning of 4 politically sensitive matters. Those matters are status of the Malay language, special position of the Malays and the natives of Sabah and Sarawak, and prerogative of the Malay Sultan and the ruling chiefs of Negeri Sembilan and Part 3. The next point is hate speech. The use of hate speech in our multicultural country has increased with the advent of social media. This has resulted in hateful and violent acts being committed which threaten peace and harmony in the country. Hate speech is commonly understood to describe types of expression that promote abuse, hostility, or prejudice against other persons and groups, in particular by reference to their race, religious views, language, national origin, or immigration status.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. So my name is Siti Aisyah binti Mohamad Faudzi, which number metric 1190320. So I will continue article number 2, which is liability of internet service provider in cyber defamation and analysis communication multimedia action 1998, writing by Zahidah Zakaria. So our group choose this article because it is related with our study in chapter 3, defamation law on the internet, and also related with the current situation happening in Malaysia. Okay, first of all, responsibility internet service provider been recognized as a problem in Malaysia. According to Blacksley in year 2010, the ISP tend to be in the middle, whether they receive and involves formal or informal legal complaint or subpoena for information. ISP also can be regarded as a third party in case where it is subscriber commit cyber defamation. So this problem can be related with the case Tonsiakan Anor Vlog Ahkin Anor in years 2014 because a reasonable who had posted defamatory statement onto Google Blog website. Next, about weakness of communication and multimedia action 1998 and also the solution. Okay, next, according to Muniza in years 2010, found that in Malaysia a regulatory regime was introduced, but there are a few drawbacks pertaining to the action. Firstly, the enactment of the action creates confusion and on what law should be applied in cyber defamation case. There is no decided case law to be determined whether online service providers are liable for unwittingly transmitting or hosting illegal or objectionable content generated by the customer. Secondly, the application of this action is still unclear because most of the cases in Malaysia show the aggrieved party only sue the party who posts that defamatory words without taking any action. Lastly, for the solution, a variety of specific solutions have been suggested to address the problem of overcoming cyber defamation in Malaysia. So according to Muniza, in years 2010, found out that communication and multimedia action 198 it used to make blogger responsible. For example, Raja Petra, a famous Malaysian blogger, has filed a defamation suit for making defamatory statement on their blogs. So this action is better taken below traditional defamation law of the CMA, and ISP responsibility are not taken into account publish defamatory statement. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.